Hey everyone, welcome to another webinar video. Today I have the man himself, Jason Coleman, on the webinar show with us today. So, Jason, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. My vocal cords have recovered enough from the flu for me to be able to talk with you for an hour or so it'll be good.
I think we've been postponing this webinar episode for probably like the last 2 weeks because of so okay.
It was tough. The first time I literally could not talk. I had lost my voice completely, and then the next week is like I was feeling better, I could talk, but if like 10 minutes of talking would make me cough. And now I still a little bit of scratchiness in my voice. It's kind of the perfect amount of scratchiness to like sing 90s rock songs in the shower. So I like this phase of being sick. Is like I start fantasize about like touring in a cover band.
Yeah, what might have been.
Yeah. So, but in other words, I'm ready.
Okay, awesome. Jason, so a couple of weeks back, we spoke a little bit on a team call, and we were basically discussing these webinar episodes, and we were discussing all the different kind of topics that we wanted to maybe cover, and some topics that we feel might be useful for our members and customers and users just to kind of go through. And you suggested a Paid Memberships Pro reports overview. And as soon as you suggested it, I was like, okay, surely you are the best to give us an overview. We do get a couple of questions on the different PM Pro reports and which reports do what, and kind of, some questions around those sort of reports. Yeah. So can you give us a bit of an overview, a bit of a dive in? And for those watching, we plan on actually doing this and showing the reports that are currently live on paidmembershipspro.com. So what you would be seeing now is actual, it's not just a demo site that we usually show. This is actually going to be live data with, live reports that we will go through. So yeah, Jason, if you're ready, you can just take us through things, and I will ask a couple of questions along the way. And just before you get going, if you could just present your screen, and then we can take it from there.
Sure, thanks. I will present my screen here. And so I'm going to show like live data from our website, paidmembershipspro.com. So it's kind of real active data for a site. My development sites range from having like no activity to being billionaires. It's really funny. Like in 2011, someone signed up, on my test site for $1,000 a month, and now, in sandbox land, I can retire. But that data looks weird. It's weird. But the live site data is good. So we'll just dive into that. I'll kind of show what I'm showing now. If you see in the middle of my screen, is the kind of we have an add-on for Paid Memberships Pro, the Responsive Reports Dashboard. And what it does is it creates this URL. If you go to PM Pro reports equals true, it's responsive for mobile. So and then if you save this, as a, in Chrome or
like a bookmark.
Safari, there's a way to bookmark an icon to your home screen. So on the home screen of my phone, I click a button and this is the view I get. And so I check this, regularly every couple hours throughout the day. And at the top of the list here, it has, sales and revenue. And I'm looking at this number, right? This is like today. How are we doing today? This is how many sales came in today. And I'll also show how this looks in the back end, like if you're on a desktop view. And then it also has like this month. I look into that, and this year. And then notice that it gets broken down by price point. So on our website, we've been slowly raising our prices over the past few years. And so any price, but $297 is like the highest, or is the most popular plan now. So typically anything that's $297 is a renewal or a new order, and anything less is a renewal. So this also like gives us a snapshot view of like how many new orders there are versus renewal. And we just know that based on price. One of the struggles we have developing Paid Memberships Pro and specifically reporting, and I'll try not to get too like, here's all the cool stuff we could do here, but focus on what we actually do. But one of the struggles is that people use Paid Memberships Pro for a variety of reasons. And some websites have just one paid level, and they're like, I don't need the breakdown by price. Like I only have one level. But some websites have like 30 levels, or some websites use discount codes a whole lot. And so if you said, hey, there was 100 sales today, it makes a big difference if those are full price sales or sales using your 1 month free discount code. So what we decided was what you care about most probably is like the price breakdown. Like usually you can figure out on our website, this means renewals versus new orders. On someone else's website, it might be like discount codes versus full price sales. And that's not always the case. So that's why, you might want to hire a developer to create custom reports for you if there's other views that you want.
And just real quick for those people watching, just before Jason moves on to the next reports that we're going to view, I will link in the comment section of this video the responsive dashboard add-on that we have, and I'm pretty sure that we have already done a video tutorial on that, so it will show you exactly how you can set it up, use that add-on to basically get reports on the go on your phone. It's super convenient. So yeah, sorry to interrupt, Jason.
No, good. Yeah, we'll want to do that. But yeah, on the membership dashboard itself, the top of the screen shows this, welcome to Paid Memberships Pro with initial setup. After you've been set up, you don't necessarily have to look at that anymore. And so if you click on this little, triangle here in the upper right, it'll hide that widget. And then we show, a few reports on the dashboard itself, recent orders, recent members. But if you click on the reports tab, you'll see some other reports. So some of those reports are on both pages, but some are only on the reports tab. And so again, here again is that sales and revenue. So this is the dashboard version, and you have to click this arrow to get the breakdown. We also have widgets for visits, views, and logins, and I'll dive into each of these, but this is what I have on my website. There's also membership stats. So sales is tied to orders, and then membership stats is tied to like people gaining membership. Typically that happens at the same time, but if you have a bunch of free users, like they might be signing up but not necessarily count as a quote unquote sale. We only count orders that are more than $0 as sales. I think even if they're using a discount code, I might be wrong. If you're using a discount code, it still might show up as a $0 sale because you expect to get money from them eventually. So yeah, on our website, we have a free level that's pretty popular, and we have sales. So you want to keep track of both. I also have the site-wide sales widget. And so this is because we run the site-wide sales add-on on our website, and that basically will show you just a list of your most recent sales, and then you have to click through for more info. I believe the video we have on that probably goes into those. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to clear up that if you install site-wide sales, will that widget automatically appear on the report section of Paid Memberships Pro?
Yeah, so the site-wide sales add-on will inject this report into the reports tab automatically. And then I have one that's gateway comparison. And so this is a custom, I'm pretty sure this is a custom report that we built on our own website. Because we were curious, like what percentage of customers use Stripe versus PayPal. When we first launched, PayPal was closer to 50-50. And just, I don't know, that's just a curious thing. Over time, more and more people are using credit cards on our website, Stripe, than PayPal Express. And so, yeah, that's just an example of a custom report. So every once in a while we have some other custom reports that we throw up here, but it's super technical, and I hid some of those from the screen here. And then built in the Paid Memberships Pro though is a refund rate custom report. I'm pretty this isn't custom. This is built into Paid Memberships Pro, and it'll show you your refund rate. And so what I look for here, we actually target a 10% refund rate, and there's a blog post where I talk about that we'll want to link to. And so typically, like, this is around 8 to 10%, and towards, like, people this month are going to refund next month, and so this report is always kind of lagging in a sense. But if it's around 8%, by the time, the following month, it's around 10%. So, like, I just look, if this gets all time, this was pretty high it has data from when we first started. But I look at, like, the year, it's actually, like, a little high. Like, I want it to be 10%. And we have a post about things you can do to kind of lower the refund rate or even raise the refund rate if, a too low refund rate, just really quickly, isn't necessarily ideal. It probably means you're not charging enough. Like, if your price is so low that people don't care to ask for a refund, you might not be charging enough. It means you might also not be, like, pushing hard enough. Like, it's definitely bad if someone purchases Paid Memberships Pro and we realize, hey, this isn't a good fit, it's not going to work for you, and we have to refund. But if that's not happening, there's people on the edge who were like, well, maybe I am, maybe I'm not, and they kind of decide not to purchase because we kind of weren't marketing hard enough. And we could have captured a sale, for every person who, like, it doesn't work out, there's someone else who, like, they were on the fence and it actually would work out. So in our experience, 10% is a pretty good refund rate. It means that you're kind of pushing hard enough, but it's not so high that it's going to get you flagged by gateways or become a problem.
Is that 10%, is that just our personal refund rate goal, or is there some sort of industry standard? Because if I think about, like, e-commerce conversion rates, like, there's generally a bit of an industry standard that you want to aim for. And do you know if this 10% is just, like I said, our personal goal, or is there a bit of an industry standard when it comes to software and memberships?
Yeah, maybe in that blog post I link to who I kind of forget where I first stumbled upon the thought that, like, hey, you should actually, if your refund rate is too low, target something like 10%. So I'm not the only person doing it, but I forget exactly, like, who had that concept. And it definitely is tied to your industry. Like, if you're shipping product to people, you probably want a lower refund rate. If you have a digital product, it's not as painful to have a refund rate.
Right.
That's 10%. So it does matter, based on your industry and things like that as well. But I don't know off the top of my head. I wonder if that blog post references, like, where I first heard that. So it's pretty common, but I wouldn't call it industry standard, because I feel like I run into a lot of people who still, like, I get to have a conversation around them where, they're like, we have a really good refund rate. It's like 2%. I'm like, whoa, maybe it's too low. And that blows their mind. They're like, the refund rate might be too low. And we're like, yeah, you might, be leaving money on the table. Right. So this is a good reminder for me. Like, I just, if I see this, the annual one or the monthly one creeping above, 10 to 12%, I'm like, oh, maybe something's wrong. Like, in our marketing, we kind of, oversold or something. And it's just a trigger for me to go into our marketing channels and say, like, are we, kind of, like, overpromising or doing something wrong, or did something happen that we pissed people off to get them refunding more than usual this month? That kind of thing. Cool. And then there's a member value report. I have this hidden because it has, people's names in it, but it shows you your top members, like the top 10 members by revenue. So I'll dive into the sales and revenue report in detail. So on our reports page, we have those widgets, and most of them have a button to get, a more detailed view. And by default, this will show me the daily revenue for February. And then this red line here is the average for this month so far. And in the beginning of the month, that's kind of less useful. Like, if I, check for March next month, it's, it's zero. Like, so if you've only, but if you're looking at old data, it's more useful. This is January. This is the actual average for January. So that's kind of useful. You can tell, like, and most products will have this kind of swing like this. This is the days of the week, pretty much. And yeah, maybe we could, what's this month? And I guess not everyone's going to be as consistent. Like, I've been surprised with, like, how kind of the nature of our business, it's still relatively consistent, like our sales month to month and even day to day. At this point, we're like 5 years into having renewals, or at least, and so like a lot of our, at least half our sales are renewals anyway, so that definitely helps to even things out.
What I like about this view, and I personally use this quite a bit, is, for example, you are now hovering over today, which is the 26th of Feb.
Yeah.
But if you go to the 25th, we seem to have a higher than average sales that day. And sometimes it's good to just try and take a step back and try and figure out what did we do right, or why was that day particularly higher than, say, the day before, and even, say, the 23rd. So perhaps, as you say, it's maybe a Sunday, and, or we've done some incredible video content, or we've done an update to our software, or whatever the case may be, and that could have possibly spiked sales. So it's always nice to kind of come back here and just, try and figure out what was the cause of it, and see if you can replicate it again.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, and vice versa. Like if you see a low days, you're like, is my website broken? One thing I do to that end is I will look, if I see a jump like this is 3,500, I'll look at last year's data and be like, how was this day last year? So the 25th last year was pretty high, was 3,000 above average. So that explains some of the jump for this year, is that there's a lot of renewals today, because in some previous year we did really well. Right. And that's one of the improvements we want to get into, is we'd like this to be like a stacked bar chart that would show like renewals and then new revenue on top of it, so you can kind of see that more clearly. Likewise, like if we could do some kind of stacked bar chart for sites that have like a lot of different membership levels, because if you see like there's 25 sales, but it might be nice to see how this is broken down. Is it like, we used to have like a developer day, you could hire us for a day to work on your site for $1,500. And so that would look like 5 sales at $300, but it's really just means that like Jason did consulting work on that day that got squeezed into the data.
Right.
But yeah, we added these average lines, because that what we realized with our brain was like, when we look, and on mobile too, when we look at the sales numbers for the day, we're like, is this average or above or below average? Like that's kind of like what you're looking for a dopamine hit. Like, am I doing good today? And so like, it's nice to see. We would always do this math. We found like we'd look at the number, and then we'd kind of like, find the monthly total and divide by 30 or so, and see is this above average day. And so we built that into the charts. The monthly view is pretty interesting. So we can look at it for last year. It'll have full data. And that gives you the same kind of view where, which are our above average months. We run a big promotion in November, so that's above average. And that's always good to look at, so to compare year to year too.
What's nice with this again is, so for me, if I take a look at the month of May, and I think the month of May was a little bit lower because we did a promotion in April, but that can also again give you some heads up, like perhaps we need to do something in the month of May, try and rev up our marketing effort, or try to do a nice product release or something like that to just kind of boost sales for 2020. So this is where this report becomes extremely valuable, just to see what happened last year and how you compare to this year and the different months. It's really a neat feature to use.
One thing I noticed about this chart for 2019 is that we're using Google Charts as an API service to draw these charts, and Google kind of figures out based on the data we put in, like what I guess this is the y-axis value should be. And I noticed that when I went to 2018, it puts the baseline at 0, which gives you this kind of nice view. It looks a little more consistent. But when I go to 2019, I guess because we had a really outstanding November, it wants to draw the chart with the baseline at 50,000. And maybe that might be something that we want to look into, like forcing that. But I didn't want to. We trust Google to kind of show the data, based on whatever heuristic it's using. So some people maybe are alarmed by that. Like changing the y-axis like that is a typical way to hack a chart and kind of have it tell a story that, you want to say like, look how good our June was. It was twice as good as May, but it wasn't really twice as good. This is just showing the tip of the charts. It's only $4,000 better. But as a business owner, you're not fooling yourself. Like this might be a really good view for you. You can kind of more clearly see the difference between the months.
Right.
But that's just like as an aside, like Google Charts will draw the charts based to the data that you put in. And if your data is really skewed, you might get some kind of funky results. The next thing I wanted to show on this chart though, is that you can do sales instead of revenue. So, let's see, I can do like annual sales, all levels. And so this will show the sales data. And one thing we'll notice, like in 2018, we kind of saw, like, if we look at the revenue, there was no lag in revenue. So I'll kind of show that. We look at revenue. I think between 2017 and 2018, we made more money. But that's a lot of that had to do with a price increase. Like we raised our prices. And when you raise prices, sales might go down. And so we kind of saw our organic growth of new sales slow down. They started leveling off around 2017. And that was part of the reason we raised our prices. It was like, hey, we want revenue to keep growing, but sales are slowing. One way to do that is to raise our prices. Like we're doing a lot more. We have 90 add-ons, not 30. Our service is better. Our competition is raising prices. So we raise prices. So this little dip shows up on the sales graph, but it didn't show up on the revenue graph. So,
and that sales, is that inclusive of recurring recurring sales and new sales? It's not just brand new sales, if I'm...
Yeah. So, yep, sales includes new sales, recurring and new sales. And I think it wouldn't record. Yeah, see that it breaks for the free level. It does filter out free stuff. So it wouldn't count like a free level. And I'm pretty sure like if a free trial wouldn't count, it would look like a $0 order. So this chart is a chart of the order activity. So we filter out, non-paid stuff. But other than that, it shows everything. Cool. And this also, like all these could benefit from like a checkbox or something to like, include recurring or not. If I limit to plus level, in 2017, we had a core level that was more like 50% at least of users. PM Pro Core. So that's in here, but we took that level away. So in one of these frameworks, we kind of like stopped offering it. So that's like it's a way to get like, a nice breakdown of sales. Yeah. And then if you have discount codes, you can limit by discount code and stuff like that as well, which is useful.
Great. Perfect. I think another report that we get asked about a couple of times, and you told me a little bit off camera that you were going to dive into it a little, is the visits, views, and logins. And now I know I often get asked, what's the difference between the two? And as we can notice from here that we're currently seeing zero value. So maybe you can just touch on a little bit of this report and just let us know how it works. Yeah.
And hopefully, there might be some personal info on here that we'll try to scrub out. So this report, what are visits, what are views, and what are logins? So a visit is one browser session. Like they came to your website. If they log in, that triggers a login. So we count all the logins. A visit is like they came to your website. Now, when they're at your website, they might view multiple pages. And so a view is every page view. So if someone visits your website one day and they view 5 pages, that's one view and 5 pages.
Okay.
If they leave their browser tab open and come back the next day, that still might count as one view, or one visit rather. If they close their whole browser activity or they use a different device, it counts as a different visit. So it's run more technically. It's run by cookies. So we create a cookie for the whole quote unquote browser session, and as long as that cookie is alive, it counts as one visit. But if people close up, it counts as another. And yeah, and this maps to kind of what Google Analytics would do. Except like Google Analytics won't track logins. And the reason we have those zero data points is we had an episode a couple weeks ago where our website crashed, and we were getting a lot of kind of denial of service type traffic from random crawlers and things like that. And kind of in the panic, the moment of like, why is our website crashing? What's going on? I decided to use a script that turns off basically the visit and view tracking.
Okay.
Because it takes like a little bit of time, and we have like over 100,000 users. So some of this stuff we've tested it, and we like Site-Wide Sales does another kind of visit tracking, and in our tests, like it wasn't buckling, up to 100,000 users. It was adding a couple milliseconds to the load time, and I think that still might be the case. But I was like, in my opinion, we don't really need this data because we use Google Analytics as well, and the Google Analytics data is more accurate. Now, Google Analytics won't let you like search for a specific user and get their visits and views, right, which is kind of nice. The other thing, and we might overhaul some parts of this, is I'm pretty sure our visit and view tracking in the core plugin is PHP based, and so if you have it's on the server. So every time the server serves a page, it says, oh, this is a new view. Let's keep track of it. But if you have page caching on your website, or you're caching different views, a lot of times it's turned off for logged in people, but it might not be in certain cases. So the data, it might be out of order. So like if you look at this report and it says, hey, I have, 1,000 visits, but Google Analytics tells me I have 5,000. It's because this was only tracking logged in members, and it wasn't tracking the cached page views that your website is serving. Inversely, it might be off in the other direction. So if you see you had 1,000 visits, but Google says you only had 100, Google has the best spam and bot detection in the world, and we do a little bit of that, I think, in the plugin. But it's not as good as Google. So if, some bot farm was hitting your site, it might look like views to us, but Google knows to, filter it out. Right. So I always say like these, like I wouldn't look to these stats. I think whether you're using this or Google's product or any other tracking products, you kind of have to take them with a grain of salt and use a bunch and like figure it out. It's not, I wouldn't sell like advertisement limits based on these stats, or anything like that. Right. And be like in court, I could prove, but we do our bets. But the login tracking is pretty useful. What's good about that is you could have like a member. This is for like fitness coaches. So like, or memberships like that. You're like, hey, I gave you a program and you're going to get results, but you have to be doing it. And then you search for their name and you see that they didn't log in this week. And you're like, well, yeah, no wonder you didn't lose weight. Like you didn't even log into the website. Right. Or like stock traders who have courses, people are like, I lost money. And you're like, yeah, but you didn't log into the website. So you're not using the system.
Yeah. Okay, that's
things like
useful.
That. So you can, so for membership sites that are a little more personal, like you're following up, you're coaching, it's kind of interesting to be able to take a look at members and like what their activity is on the site.
Perfect.
But if you are concerned about performance, you want to take out like the 2 milliseconds, or you kind of, or personal reasons too, like tracking even just visits, views, and logins for your members like that. I said stalking your members to make sure that you're on your site. It may or may not be illegal based on your jurisdiction right, around privacy laws. And so if you want to turn off some of that tracking, we have code just to do that. It's still kind of a gray area, some of this generic tracking. Like I think the industry is figuring out, what kind of tracking is appropriate or not. I think like the GDPR would say tracking visits like that in a non-anonymized way is probably bad.
Yeah. So Jason, I think cool. You've basically touched on the refund rate report and the gateway comparison, which is a custom report. There's not much more to dive into those two per se. I think that's pretty much we've gotten the gist of it. So I think
straightforward.
I think the last one that we need to kind of take a look at is the membership stats, and so maybe you can just talk us through that.
Sure. So it's the membership stats. So like I said, this will track signups. And it's also meant to like track your your churn, your cancellation rate. And so here we call like Paid Memberships Pro differentiates between a cancel and an expiration. So if someone had a membership and it expired, it gets logged as expiration. If they actively canceled, or the subscription that was linked to the membership got canceled, or an admin canceled the account, that counts as a quote unquote cancel. So that's the differentiation there. And then a sign up is any sign up. So the other reports we were looking at earlier were tied to orders, and it was filtering out $0 orders. If you have a website and you kind of want to see what the activity is for your free membership levels, you're going to get that through this. So we can kind of like 2019 monthly free signups versus cancellations. And we'll see, it's like this. And we have like a very low cancellation rate for the free level. Let me look at the plus level. Cancellation, and this makes sense. The free level doesn't cost anything. The paid level does cost, so we can see kind of like what our cancellation rate is. Now, one thing actually we're planning to change. So it's interesting we're showing this report, but the data is going to get shifted. This is one of the confusing things about tracking cancellations. So say let's look at like June of 2019. There was 21 cancellations. Does that mean that 21 people canceled in the month of June, or does it mean that 21 of the people who signed up in June canceled?
Right.
Yeah. So the report you're looking at actually means the latter. So it means that of the 154 people who signed up this June, 21 of them canceled. Which is kind of why, like, the further you go back, the data, there's more cancellations. So it's like, like if this was like, and I think that's wrong. So it's funny, like we're going to change this. Maybe like we'll splice this into the video at some point, because we're actively planning on changing this for like a release in the next couple months. I think what you'd rather want to see is how many people canceled this month. I think that's a better, 219 people signed up and so many people canceled. And this also is tied into our wanting to be able to handle renewals better, to give people like a better reflection of the churn rate. So I guess to avoid that confusion, I'll now focus on talking about what it shows. But it means that like in 2017, of the 219 people who signed up, 170 of them aren't using our software anymore 4 years later. The good news is that, 49 people are, which is pretty good, like when you push it out year to year. So March is pretty low because March hasn't happened yet. When the people who signed up in March, they have to pay again, they're going to cancel, right? So people, in 2019, 178 people signed up in March. We'll see how many of them, and that's the thing too, like it counts as a cancel. Yeah. So our different industries will have different refund rates. Right. Like this is software that people may or may not need every year. And we've traditionally had like a 50% renewal rate, which is actually pretty good. I think in SaaS businesses, you measure the churn month to month because you have month to month memberships, and you definitely don't want 50% churn. You want more like 5% churn, less than 15% churn, that kind of thing. Right. So for my data, these are annual churn numbers, and and again, like it's showing how many people in March in 2019 canceled. So the data for looking back historically is kind of more useful than if you look for like the 2000 numbers. Like, of course, like people signed, this is, basically, 181 people signed up and only 4 of them canceled. Like, that's pretty good. Yeah. But a year from now, when they have to pay again, that's like the real test. They only have to pay a year from now. So,
Cool.
Yeah, we could look at like free. So if I look maybe like 2018 free, I showed like the 2019 free data, and there wasn't a lot of cancellations. But I guess if I go back a year, it's still like our free level still doesn't have that many cancellations at all, which is interesting.
I suppose it makes sense in the fact that it's people like have a free membership, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, these are
if they don't use it, they might not just
and these are
cancellation.
And these are they're pretty dormant. And I think so. The only reason a free person might cancel is because they don't want to get the email anymore, and they do that in our setup. They do that directly through MailChimp, and canceling on MailChimp doesn't cancel their free account on the website. And so a lot of these are just dormant. They didn't remove. And one thing we're actually going to do pretty recently or pretty soon is run some scripts to delete dormant users.
Right.
So and when we do that, I'll try to share that because other sites might want to do that. But any user who hasn't logged in, remember we tracked their logins, who hasn't logged in over a year and they've never paid us anything and they've never posted to our forums or commented, like they've never interacted with the site and they haven't logged in for over a year, maybe we'll do 2 years.
Yeah.
Like we want to remove those people from the site because they, it just clogs up our database of users, and we have to maintain a login for them. We have to worry about privacy concerns for them, even though they're not interacting with the site anymore. So yeah, we get, let's see, like 2,000, how many free signups per month? I think it's around like 1,500 free signups per month. So over time, like there's just a lot of people signing up. Cool.
Jason, I as I'm watching you go through these reports, I'm wondering about how many people who are watching alongside with us are frantically trying to pause the video and see all of the juicy stats that Paid Memberships Pro is doing. So I wonder, firstly, I know that you are pretty open about how Paid Memberships Pro does its business, as well as how much it makes on a monthly and annual basis. Could you maybe tell us a little bit of your philosophy around that? Because quite a lot of times you don't want to share any secret source or details of business, at least as publicly as you are comfortable doing. And then maybe you can just show us around a little bit on whatever you feel comfortable showing.
Yeah. So in person, I'm very transparent. Like I find people often are like beating around the bush. Even on the podcast, I was on a podcast once, I won't name it now, but they're kind of asking questions that would allow them to do the math. And I was like, do you just want to know how much money we make? Like, I'll tell you, like, cause it's not like a bragging thing. It's like an educational thing. Well, now it's bragging. When we weren't making as much money, it wasn't a bragging thing, but, it's like an educational thing. And I feel that, people have an idea, like we're a business in an open source space, and we have users, and we're kind of at conferences, and both our customers and users and then other businesses in the same space are they're thinking about how much money is being made. So a customer, for instance, if they thought we weren't making any money, they'd be like, are they going to be able to stay in business? Like, I'm signing up, but like, are they even going to be here?
Right.
I definitely saw another company do like a lifetime license deal. And I was like, is that a sign that they're going out of business because they don't expect to be in business? Like they're just trying to like cash in. So like I had that thought for like other products. Like, so people are thinking, like, they're curious, like how is the business behind the product doing? Because if they're not doing well, they might not be around to support me. So on the other side of things, there's some people who think we're making tens of millions of dollars, and then they don't understand why it takes a day to respond to a support request,
right?
Or why it takes a couple months to do like a bug fix. And in those cases, it's good to be, the reality is somewhere in the middle. So it's like, hey, we're making enough money that it's a profitable business and we're able to support this, but we're not like gouging people. We make enough money, and we pay developers to maintain the software. We pay support engineers to support it. And we don't have enough money to double our staff instantly to be able to double like our response times on things. Not that that always happens anyway. So I find it's like people are guessing how much you're making. I'm like, let me just tell you, and then you still might be upset. You still might say like, oh, like if I guess like the annual report is pretty good. Hey, you made $800,000 revenue last year. Like they could still make a judgment. Like you should have been able to do X. You should have been able to sponsor my WordCamp. Look how much money you're making.
Right.
But at the same time, at least they have the real number. So they still might be upset, but at least they have the real number.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Then the other part of it is the kind of education, because I see other businesses in the space, and specifically like I'm proud of how Kim and I have been able to build a business on top of an open source software project. So the code, all of our code, including our premium add-ons, are available for free because we've embraced this idea of open source software, that people should be able to use the software for good, and having it open is going to, encourage people to contribute to the software, and we'll end up with the best product that way. And it's on us, like, can we build a business on top of it? And we've been able to. So I think some other people might look to us as an example of like, oh, I have open source software, or I have a software product. Can I also make a living? And I think that's unclear, because you might see people who seem quote unquote successful, but they are either, they're not making a profit. The thing that's not shown here is this is revenue. There's then costs, and then what's your profit.
Right.
And so if there's some businesses that are making money, but they're not making profit. And so like that's misleading, or, so I think showing my transparent numbers will help people. Oh, like it's like we make a very comfortable living. Kim and I, we pay ourselves out of that 800,000 revenue, plus at this point, a team of 10 other people. And we still have a profit left over. So like we're doing well, and to show other, potential entrepreneurs that that's possible is encouraging to them. The kind of other story I see is, I just saw another one where someone was like, had said, oh, like my new software as a service is making $1,000 a month. And they kind of were sharing some details about it. And that was kind of us in 2012, right? So like this was a little more than $1,000 a month.
Right.
And whenever someone says that, that's like a milestone people have, like $1,000 a month. And then another milestone is kind of $10,000 a month is the next, digit to your number. Plus like $10,000 a month in the US is if you're able to take home a lot of that is like a 6-figure middle class salary. And so people have that goal of getting from $1,000 a month to $10,000. And I like to say like, hey, if you're at $1,000 a month, you're halfway to $10,000 a month.
Right.
You're not halfway to $2,000 a month. You've done all the work. Part of what's not shown on this chart is that we were developing the product in 2010, and that was based on products that we built in 2009 and 2008, right? And so, all the work we did just to get to $1,000 a month. Some people are ready to give up at that point. They're like, I built a product, like I've gained some traction, but it's $1,000 a month. It's not really worth my time. Like I'd rather just take on, one more consulting project. Right. But if you can what I want to do is encourage them and say like, if just based on our stats, we were 2 years from $10,000 a month. So it took 2 years to get to $1,000 a month, like 2 more years, we were around $10,000 a month. And then 2 more years after that, we had quadrupled. And so I think this is you still there's a lot of hard work in there, obviously year to year of like building the product and doubling down. But I wanted to show kind of like at least one example that I think it's not uncommon, how we've built our business, but that's an example of like, hey, like stick with it.
Yeah.
You might not get to, $10,000 a month in a year, but in 2 years is like or you may or may not, depending on how you're doing, but it's very reasonable to get it within 2 years. And so,
and if you think about, if you look forward, 2 years can sometimes seem like a lifetime. It's just going to take forever to get there. Like, how am I going to survive? But if you look backwards, like from the present to the past, 2 years is like nothing. And I was curious to maybe just ask you, so we have this kind of goal to try and reach 20% growth in terms of, say, revenue per year. And I want to know if you could, because obviously there is a lot of contributing factors that goes into Paid Memberships Pro as a business, and that contributes to growth. But if you could give like one brief kind of core reason you think Paid Memberships Pro has grown from strength to strength over the years, what would you mainly attribute that success to? Even if it's a guess, an educated guess, kind of.
Oh, yeah. What's our success? I think when we when we launched Paid Memberships Pro, Kim and I wanted it to be the best membership platform for WordPress, and we viewed it as a platform, and that was our primary goal, is to get people using the plugin and the platform. And we really, the money part came second. So it's like, we need money to maintain it. And so we kind of had these goals along the way where it was, hey, it needs to be, at least a certain amount to make up for the time that we're working on it. The opportunity cost. One of my transparency reports has kind of our consulting revenue on this chart and how the consulting revenue went down. And there was a year or two when like our total revenue went down because we were focused on this. So we were like investing in the product.
Right.
So there was an investment that went on, but we were like, hey, we want to build the platform and get people using it first. And we then need to make enough money to maintain the project, to hire developers. And so I think from a standpoint, if you're trying to make money, like maybe thinking of money first would have been better. There's definitely been opportunities where it's like we could have raised prices quicker. We could have kind of, chose different ways to monetize or different products to offer, and just kind of focus in on the money. But we really were like, we always think like what's best for the platform. We have a long-term view. So I think our long-term view has helped because we didn't pinch the rock in 2015 or 16 and maybe get kind of like a short-term blip that would have been nice, but not like, for the long term, we're trying to maintain this as a project right. And a platform. And so we focused on that. I think that's been part of our success. Like, and like that 20% growth per year it's kind of a random target. And it's based on like the history of how we've been able to grow before. And I think it's good to have some target like that because it forces you to make decisions. Like when you set that target in the beginning of the year, and then you check in like in June and you're like, oh, like we didn't magically get 20% growth. What are we going to do about it? We actually have to do something to make money. So while we're focused on the platform, like we're always like, hey, improve features, get more people using it. Every once in a while, we have to check in and be like, we also need money to keep this project going.
Of course, yeah.
How are we going to get money? So like we're focused on the platform first, but we're like every once in a while, then that 20% growth, we check in on that every like quarter or so, is like, hey, like we need to find a way to keep, because the project is growing. It takes more people to maintain and support it. That kind of 20% growth in revenue is going to help us to keep hiring and stuff like that. And so having the target means that we check in and then we're like, oh, we got to do something. Like either we're going to raise prices or we're going to focus on these areas of the business that are tied more directly to the knobs of how we make money.
Yeah.
Refactoring some code is probably good for the project, and we do that. But sometimes it's like, hey, this month or this quarter, let's optimize our checkout process or optimize the prompts inside the plugin that ask people to pay and stuff like that. Like a quick story I've shared before is, our license server. So you for our add-ons to update, you have to have an active license.
Right.
And when we launched, there was code in there saying like, hey, if your license is expired, don't let people download the update. And I was worried there might be problems when we first launched. So I commented out that code because I wanted to like anyone who tries to update against our server should be able to update. Like who's actually trying, to sneak zip. It's all open source anyway. Like, so I commented out the code that actually like, says, hey, sorry, you got to pay the update. And I was like, I'll get to it a year later. And I forgot about it. So we just left it there. We never noticed. But I think 2 years later, when we had one of those discussions where we're like, all right, we've been doing good, but is there any quick wins to raise revenue? I was like, oh, I think we don't actually, stop serving the updates if the license is invalid.
Right.
And I was like, I could probably code that quick. I coded it really quick because it was already coded. I just had to undo the comment in the code. But I think our sales jumped like 10% after doing that, because there was a certain percentage of people whose license had expired and they just click update. It works. They're like, they don't know. But then they get a message saying like, hey, your PM Pro license expired. You got to pay. And like, they're not trying to cheat it. They're like, you know what I mean? They weren't, it was like, so there's always that was like a very low hanging fruit for us, but there's things like that. Like if you switch your focus and say, okay, like we've been working on the product, we've been working on the platform, but like, how do I, how do I make money? So we focus on the platform, and that, like, every once in a while we check in and say like, are we making enough money to support this thing? And I think long term, I think WordPress was built that way. It was, let's make the platform great and build a business on top of it. And the business was kind of an afterthought.
Right.
And because the platform was so good, a bunch of businesses naturally built on top of it. So that's my goal with Paid Memberships Pro, is like, we need to make enough money to maintain the project, but there are other businesses that have been built on top of Paid Memberships Pro, which is great. That's what I want to encourage, and that's going to keep it going. And there'll be opportunities for us when we want them,
For sure. Great. Jason, I think that is about all the time we have for this video. I just want to thank you so much for hopping on a call with me. I know that you are busy and you've got a lot of other tasks and things to do in the business, and of course with the plugin. So thank you very much for joining me on the video today.
All right. Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Travis.
Great. Okay, we can just stop there, and thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
week.